Today, we're going to be taking all those sensors you've installed all over your house over the last few years, and we're going to turn those into an alarm system using the Alarmo control panel. So let's get started. We're going to start by installing the Alarmo panel or the Alarmo integration. That's done through HACS, and if you haven't ever installed HACS, you need to make sure that you have that installed first. I've got a video on that, and there's a bunch of videos on how HACS is installed in Home Assistant. So let's go over there and get that started now. So we're going to go into HACS here. And I'm going to go to integrations because the Alarmo panel is an integration. And down here on the bottom right is going to be the Explore and Download repositories. And we're going to go ahead and install Alarmo here. Should be able to search for it. Here we are, Alarmo. And it's going to go ahead and install it. You can read all of this information, which is essentially the install, and we're going to go through all that anyway. And then you can download this repository with HACS. If you want to use the beta version, you can do that. Otherwise, we'll select the version, which is defaulted to the current. Download it. Now, if you go to the very bottom, you'll see here that we'll need to restart Home Assistant in order for this integration to work. And that's first step. So let's go over there and always make sure that you are checking your configuration before you restart it. So click the check configuration button, make sure there's nothing wrong with anything that you've updated or messed with, and then we'll do a restart. All right, so Home Assistant has restarted. Now that's step one, you install it through HACS. The second step is actually to add the integration between HACS and Home Assistant. And we do that under our configuration integrations section here. So we'll click on configuration, and then we'll be in our devices and services area. And again, you'll go down here and you'll add integration. So we'll click on that and you'll search for Alarmo. Click on Alarmo here and it'll say, please wait while it's being set up. All right, so the configuration for Alarmo has been created and it found this device, and you can set an area for it. I'm not going to, because essentially this is going to be for the entire house. I'm going to click on Finish. And now we have Alarmo here, one device and one entity. It has created an Alarmo section or Alarmo entry on this side panel. This is how you're going to configure and set up Alarmo. So we're going to go ahead and click on that first. And before we get into all this setup, I'm going to start going through and talking a little bit about what Alarmo is. So let's go over to the Alarmo GitHub page made by Niels Faber. This is an alarm system integration for Home Assistant. It provides user interface for setting up your own alarm system completely from the browser. So that's a key, right? No YAML is required. There is one piece of, or one section where YAML might be required, but it's an optional section and you don't have to use that. So if you want the basics without getting into super custom setups, then you don't need to do anything with YAML. All right, so there's all this stuff, and I'm not going to go through all of this in detail because it is a rather very well written document that explains a lot of things, and this video would be super long if I did that. So we're going to go through the basics. So again, this is an integration for the alarm control panel domain in Home Assistant. It allows you to combine existing sensors to create a security system for your house. It's comparable with a manual alarm in Home Assistant, but has some additional features. So there's three parts. It is a Alarmo component, which is a custom component for HA that controls the states of the alarm panel. There's the alarm panel itself. It's a GUI for configuring the settings of your alarm, sensors, delays, actions, etc. And then there's the Alarmo card. It's a custom card for arming, disarming the alarm. You can use the built-in HA alarm card, but Alarmo card has a few more things added to it that makes it a little bit easier to use. It's fully compatible with the Home Assistant alarm card or alarm panel card I just talked about. Has an integrated panel for complete management via the UI, no YAML required, except for extreme custom configuration. No restarts required when making changes. Can set up four arm modes, or up to 4 arm modes. You've got armed away, armed home, armed night, armed custom bypass. Each of those has configurable delays and a security perimeter. It supports configuring your existing HA entities as security sensors. That's basically taking all the stuff around the house, which I talked about, and making that into your alarm system. Allows setting up multiple users with individual PIN codes and permission levels. It will restore its previous state after a restart of HA. That's very important. You don't want it to disarm if your Home Assistant restarts for some reason. It has built-in actions, so you can receive push notifications when anything changes in your system. You can activate a siren when the alarm is triggered, etc., etc. Typical stuff you would think would be part of an alarm system. And it also supports splitting up your house security system into multiple areas, which can be armed independently. So if you have a west wing or an east wing, those of us fortunate enough to have a multi-billion-dollar house with multiple wings, you can set that up. I don't, by the way. My whole house will be one entity or one area. So let's go down here a little ways and talk about the alarm functionality. This is a diagram that describes the operational states. Now, this is pretty standard for an alarm system. Your alarm is disarmed or disabled. Then you arm it. It allows you to leave your area, your house, so it has a leave delay. Then that expires and it goes to arm. It watches the sensors. If something gets triggered, say you open the door to enter the house, then you can enter the house and you can disable it using the unlock code. Otherwise, when the entry delay expires, it will then trigger the whatever actions you want to trigger whenever the alarm is activated. So let's go into some of the settings to start off with, and we'll talk about those briefly. This panel is the general settings panel, and you can see up here we have multiple general, sensors, codes, and actions. So we'll start with general. You can disarm after trigger. So after trigger time has expired, disarm the alarm instead of returning to armed state. You can also enable MQTT, and we'll talk about MQTT later on. You have your different modes: armed away, armed home, armed night, armed vacation, which they didn't talk about in the description, and then armed custom bypass. And then you have your different areas. You can add another area, and then you can copy the settings from the main area or whatnot. All right, so sensors. Currently, Alarmo supports sensors of type binary sensor. It will check the device class of each sensor and only supports sensors that are related to security. Those sensors should show up automatically in the Sensors tab, which is what we were just looking at here. This is the Sensors tab. Simply check the sensors that you wish to include in the alarm and click Add to Alarm. And then you can review the configuration for each sensor in the Sensors card. Now, the sensor configuration allows defining a type for each sensor entity. Setting a type has the benefit that the appropriate configuration is automatically set. For example, doors, windows, motion, tamper, environmental. Those all have ARM modes specific to that type of sensor and also has enabled configuration options. Assigning a sensor type is not mandatory, and all configuration settings can be set manually. You can deviate from the predefined configuration of a setting or a sensor setting type as well. So here's the table that shows all of this. I will link this document in my description because there's a lot of useful information in here. Again, I'm not going to go over in detail for all of it. So let's go over and see what kind of sensors have been picked up by my setup here. Backdoor entry is a tamper. So I think out of the box, some of these are not being defined correctly. And this is just the state of the way Home Assistant set these up initially. I've had these sensors in here for years. Home Assistant has come a long, long way in setting up the different device classes, and I just haven't gone back through and set these up. So you'll see a lot of these in here are things that aren't actually the correct device class, and we'll go through and set those up here in a second. So let me find some. There's so many here. Front door motion, so that's one I want. Front hall motion. A lot of these too are motion detectors based on my camera system. So if I wanted some sort of alert when there was somebody on the front porch, I could actually assign that to my alarm system. I don't want to do that right now. So they're saying that the door entries are all tamper. I need to change those to door. So we're going to ignore this for a minute. Here's another motion sensor. All these windows are also being listed as tamper. So if we look back over here and we see we have windows and doors and motion and tamper, you can see the device classes, right? Door would be door, garage door, lock, opening. Window would be window. Motion would be motion, moving, occupancy, presence, and then tamper would be sound, opening, or vibration. So it's assigning doors and things as tamper, which is not correct. Upstairs motion is a good one. Let's go through and let's figure out how we fix the device class issue here. I'm going to go ahead and add this. I've added the other ones already that we selected earlier. I'm going to add this to the alarm. And if we go back to general, now we see we have 6 sensors active, and you can click on these and it'll show right here in this list of which sensors you have active. and what kind of modes they're set for. You can also enable and disable each one of these sensors as well. But let's say this one right here, this garage door or back door, thinks it's tamper, and you can tell by the icon it thinks it's a tamper, and even if you hover over it. If you want to change this to a door, which I do, I can click on it and change the device type to door and then save that because I want to make sure that this is set correctly. So I've just set it to door, and you can see here that we have these now set as doors. These are all motion, which they should be. We can go now down through here and we can select all of these sensors that we want to apply to this particular alarm system that we're building. So I'm going to go through each one of these and select them, add them in, and we'll move on to the next step here in just a moment. So we have all of these sensors now added to the security system, and they'll be acted upon or can do something with the alarm if they get tripped. And then the arm modes that they will be applied to. So away, home, away. So it's important to know which alarm mode you're using. Because, for example, if you have motion detection, you're going to want that only to go off when you're not in the house. If you have a stay or home mode, you want to make sure that those do not trip if you walk around the house. So let's say at nighttime, or you set the alarm for when you're just in the house. You can walk around the house and you don't want those motion sensors to trip the alarm because you are in the house itself. But when you're away, you do want those motion sensors to trip. So those are the modes that it would work in. And you can see that here. We have armed away, 16 sensors. So everything is part of the away mode, and then only 9 sensors are part of the home mode. That's your entry and your windows for the most part. You can customize this to add other types of systems or other types of detectors into this. So if, let's say you have one area of your house that you don't have, or that isn't going to have motion when you leave or enter, and you want that one, or when you're home, that is, and you want that one to be tripped if something happens, you can come into that specific sensor itself. I'll just say attic, for example. Typically, I'm not going to be in the attic, so I can click on this and set this to home mode home mode as well. So that means that if there is activity with this sensor, whether I'm home or not, or whether I've armed it as a home mode or an away mode, it will still trip. So you can set that and customize it. And there's advanced settings for all of these. You can use exit delay. You can allow open after arming, use entry delay, and trigger when unavailable. And we can read about all of that stuff here. So use exit delay. Allow the sensor to be active when arming. If disabled, the sensor must be inactive prior to arming the alarm. Otherwise, the arming will fail. It only applies to arm modes having an exit delay. And it applies to the moment of arming. After the exit delay is started, the sensor may become active. So it allows you to leave the house, in other words. Use entry delay. If enabled, the sensor triggers the alarm after the entry delay. Otherwise, this happens immediately. Only applies to arm modes having an entry delay. So if you open a door, you want to have that entry delay give you so much time to disarm the alarm if you're walking over to an alarm panel on the wall or something. Always on means it gets triggered no matter what, even when the alarm is disarmed. Allow opening after arming. Sensor is allowed to remain active until after the alarm is set to arm. The initial activation is ignored. Again, allows you to leave the house or whatever. The second activation triggers the alarm. Arm after closing. If other sensors are still active at this moment, the arming fails. Alarmo uses a built-in 5-second delay to allow for contact bounce. So if you shut a door and it kind of bounces, it'll give you that 5-second delay before it triggers the alarm. You can bypass automatically and trigger when unavailable. HA defines the unavailable state for sensors for when the state is undeterminate, either open or closed. It occurs when the battery-powered sensor loses connection to the gateway. Also could be the result of tampering. So if you're worried about tampering with the device and you want the alarm to be set off when it's unavailable, then you can set that setting as well under this advanced area. All right, so let's talk about sensor groups. The goal of sensor groups is to reduce false positives or false triggers. So what that means is if you put 2 sensors or more in a group, both of those sensors have to be activated within a certain period of time in order for that alarm to be triggered. Any sensor can be added to the group, but a sensor can only be a member of one group. You can have as many groups as you want. it is recommended to minimize this, let's say 1 group per floor or per room. It needs to have at least 2 sensors to function correctly or never be triggered, obviously. And it needs to be configured with a timeout time, after which the consecutive sensor events are no longer considered related. So to add a group, we go back over to our control panel here, and we'll just pick this section right here. We'll click on 16 sensors. So let's take a couple of our motion sensors. I want the kitchen living motion. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to set up groups. In a sensor group, multiple sensors must be activated within a time period. Okay, so new group. I'm going to call this group downstairs, and then I'm going to add these sensors to it. So I want to have front hall motion, and I want to have kitchen living motion, and I'm going to save it. Now here's the timeout period. This is really, really long. This is a time period during which consecutive sensor activation triggers the alarm. That's 10 minutes. So let's just make this down into, let's say 1 minute. So if they trigger both of those within a period of 1 minute, the alarm will trigger. So now we've added those 2 sensors to the group. So an individual one of those 2 cannot set the alarm off. They both have to actually be triggered for it to work. All right, so those are sensor groups. So let's talk about MQTT real quickly. Alarmo supports MQTT for external control of the alarm. It's intended for third-party applications such as alarm panels, like touchscreens in the hallway, something like that. The MQTT support needs to be enabled before it can be used. It's under the General tab. So if we go back over to General, we can enable MQTT, and then you can click on the configuration. The state topic you can change. We'll leave it as default. These are the topics that are going to be sent over to the MQTT broker. Event topic, Alarmo event, and command topic, Alarmo command. So you can send MQTT commands to Alarmo to do certain things as well. Let's talk about that. The state topic is used to publish the state changes and is sent by Alarmo, should be received by another application such as a wall panel display. And of course, here's the default topic. It will send the current state of the Alarmo entity as a payload, and then the payload is sent per state, can be configured if desired. We just showed all that. You have all those different states you can set. The event topic is used for publishing additional status updates. It's an output topic and is sent by Alarmo and is received by another application such as the wall panel again. The command topic is used for external control of Alarmo through MQTT. So you can publish stuff from MQTT to Alarmo to control different things. All right, so let's get into setting one up real quick. So here are the codes. Use ARM code, which I never use. Use disarm code. And then you can set the PIN code as either password or PIN code. And then I'm going to add a new user, just a test user, Alarmo user. Code is allow code for arming. Don't need that. Allow code for disarming is override code. Entering this code will arm the alarm and force. So you could force alarm the system if one of your sensors is in a state where it doesn't allow it to arm. We'll just save it. So now we have one user that can disable or enable the alarm. And then under actions, finally, you have 2 options here. You can do new notifications and you can do actions. So under notifications, we want to say if the alarm is armed to specific modes, you can do armed away or armed home. And then you want to set a device to send this to. You can use any of your notification channels. So you can choose your target, and there's a lot of targets. I have a number of notification channels set up. So I can use a smart speaker and have it talk to my specific speaker. The alarm is set to whatever mode it is, and you can insert wildcards for this as well, and then you can save it. Under actions, there's things you can do with actions as well. Let's say the alarm is triggered in any of these modes. You want to turn on lights. So I want all my inside lights to turn on. Now, if you have a siren, you can activate the siren as well. So you either can turn on or turn it off. So I'm going to turn on the lights, and you can name the description of this: set inside lights to be on when triggered, and save it. And now we have set inside lights on when triggered or notify guest speaker on upon arming. So if you want to use the Alarmo card, you're going to have to go into HACS and install it. So click on, you're going to be in front end, not integrations this time. Click on Explore, search for Alarmo. Here's the Alarmo card. Install it or download it. All right, so we will reload the browser to bring it, make it available to us. Now we can go into one of our dashboards. I'll just pick one here, a little play dashboard, edit the dashboard, and then add a card. And we will look for the Alarmo card. Okay, so here's the alarm panel card. You have to choose an entity. You can give it a name if you want to. Arm away, action, arm home, disarm are all available. You can resize things however you want to. You can show icons. You can keep the keypad always visible or only visible whenever it's armed. And you can display diagnostic messages when alarm is triggered or cannot be armed. All right, so we'll save that now. We'll get out of edit mode here. And now if I want to arm away, could not alarm due to the following sensors: back door lock, the current status of the door, and front door lock. So these two, for some reason, are in a state that I can't arm them. So I'll have to go figure that out. If what I do arm home, will that work? Nope. You can also skip exit delay and bypass open sensors if you want to do that. And now I've armed it and I've got a 40-second timeout on here. And that's one thing I didn't show you as well. You can go in there and set your exit and entry delays under your options. So this had a 40-second delay. I can go ahead and disarm it now. So under your armed and disarmed, you can set your exit delay. I want that 30 seconds. Entry delay, I want that 20 seconds. Trigger time during which the alarm will remain in the triggered state after activation. So 30 minutes, I'm going to make that 10 minutes. All right, so now if I go back over and I arm that alarm under this panel, it should only have about 10 seconds. And I can bypass open sensors and arm it again. All right, so you're right, I have 10 seconds now to get out the door before that thing goes into arm mode. And you've got that counter. That's the benefit of the Alarmo card. It gives you that, and it gives you also some diagnostic information to tell you whether or not it's active or why it can't arm. And of course, we can disarm it here with the code. Now we're disarmed. Okay, well, this is probably a super way too long video about an alarm system, but it does cover a lot of pieces. I encourage you to read the whole article, the whole documentation on the Alarmo stuff. There's some cool stuff in there. Again, I'll link that down below. Make sure you install it through HACS, add the integration, and if you want to use the Alarmo card, you need to also install that through HACS as well. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. If you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. If you liked the video, thumbs up. Of course, everything helps the algorithm, and the algorithm is in charge of everything we do these days. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.